We are going to go right into our next topic and hang tight because after this we'll have a trivia. We've got a couple good prizes. Unfortunately, our online folks can't join in on this as well, but stay with us, and then after that we'll have a drink here in Subculture. I want to invite to this stage my partner in crime, Kate Emanuel with the Ad Council. Remember Kate? So Kate, we were lucky to work together on some vote research for Ad Council Edge and Ad Council together, which is exciting this year. And because of the election, this is also something a lot of brands and causes are going to use. Now you're going to talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about some research and have a great conversation.
Good. Yeah. And I think you're in New York now, but your team, because Kate's from D.C.
Yeah, I don't like to say this in front of a bunch of New Yorkers, but anyone from D.C. in the room, because go Nats. All right, got some DC folks. So.
All right, I'll let you head out.
Okay, all right, so really excited to talk today about voting. First up is Andy Bernstein, who's the CEO of Headcount, and they use the power of music and music festivals to register young adults. They've registered 600,000 young adults to date. Andy, come out on the stage. Let's give a round of applause for Andy. All right. Have a seat, Andy. And then I love introducing Eves Matthew is going to come out. He's got this awesome bio. So he is a full-time model. He is a musician. He spends, though, a lot of his time volunteering. He plays bingo with seniors at a nearby senior center. He talks to LGBT youth at local shelters. He talks to middle schoolers about drug abuse and using creative ways to express themselves. And lastly, he fosters pit bulls who have been strays or rescued from dog fights. So he's just this incredible person, and I'm going to welcome out to the stage right now. Eves, come on out. Thank you. All right. So we got this thing called an election next year, Andy. Headcount, has been so successful to date at registering young adults. If you look at next year, between Gen Z and millennials are going to make up 37% of the electorate. So it's big. What are you guys doing differently this year to gear up, Andy, and how have you guys been so successful to date?
Well, thank you, and it is a pleasure to be here. So we started 15 years ago with the idea of, hey, let's register voters at concerts, and started with a small group of artists that were supportive of our work, and it grew and grew and grew. This year, we're out on tour with Ariana Grande. We've we're in 62 markets right now, with volunteer teams and staff registering voters. So when we look at 2020, we know it's going to be our biggest year ever. It's not only an opportunity, but really a calling and a responsibility. And one of the things we're going to do for the first time is we're going to hire full-time organizers in up to a dozen cities. So places like Detroit, Milwaukee, Richmond, Virginia, that really are going to decide this election. And find really creative ways to go beyond concerts. Like in Philadelphia, we're going to work with Federal Donuts, which is a cool boutique donut brand, and we're going to give out donuts and create places that people want to come to get free donuts and register voters there, and be doing these on a daily basis outside of the concert environment. And then the other big push for us is how we're going to work with brands. And we've had really good experiences. Levi's has been a partner, and Ben & Jerry's for many years, Patagonia. And we know that corporate America is going to engage around this election. We are nonpartisan, so we're a very good partner in that regard. And so we're preparing. We've built up a partnership department. We've built up various things that are really plug and play for brands, but also going to take the approach to be very custom, which is what we found brands want. Brands often have their own vision on how they want to do things.
Sure.
And so we try to meet them where they are and fill in gaps, and whether it's registering voters at their stores or creating digital campaigns or things that their brand spokespeople can do. And I think that's going to be a real calling card for Headcount in 2020 is how we work with brands.
Sure. And tell us why you're going a little bit beyond music festivals and those kind of activations.
Well, it's always happened organically.
Yeah.
Way back to the first year, I remember getting an email from one of our volunteers saying, I registered voters at a supermarket in an inner city neighborhood yesterday, and it was great. And we started something called, Community Outreach Day. And eventually, that experience helped us be one of the founders of National Voter Registration Day, where we always go beyond music. But in the recent years, we've seen it. Last year, we did 400 non-music events, a lot of them with March for Our Lives and the Parkland students. And these were things that were really moving the needle. We weren't just registering a lot of voters, but we were connecting with young activists in a way we never had before outside of the music space. So it's very enriching, and the numbers are there. I mean, March for Our Lives was the biggest single day in our history in terms of voter registration. So it works, and it's a big part of how we are growing the organization.
Sure, makes sense. Great. Eves, you are really incredibly talented. You're very busy. You're a model, musician, active volunteer. What are you doing to help get out the vote, and why is it important to you?
Hey everybody, I apologize for my voice. I'm getting over the flu, and I'm also dressed like a fancy mailman.
That is true.
Right. But ways that I try, I'm very on the ground, kind of want to get my hands dirty kind of person. And I work a lot with kids and youth and teenagers. And a lot of the work that I do with teens is kind of just sewing into them that when they get to that age of being able to volunteer, to vote and volunteer, and vote, that their voice does count, because it's very easy to be put into a state of mind of feeling like you don't matter when you see people who look like you or go through the same things that you go through not being heard or acknowledged or recognized. And I think it's important as a votable, is that a word?
Sure.
A votable adult, to show them that it is possible and that it can be done, and your voice can be heard. And even though we may not see change tomorrow, you can see change the next day.
Yeah, that's great. Great. I have to ask, because I'm from the Ad Council, about messaging and communications when talking to voters. We just wrapped up some research with Democracy Works, where we looked at different messaging frames across different generations, like Gen Z versus baby boomers. And we kind of want to understand what messages are really motivating to voters. Because I think what we see is a lot of either one size fits all, or political parties are just talking to the hardcore voters. And we're kind of talking at voters. Vote for this candidate, or just vote. And what we found in our research is what the issues was really motivating to people, more so than saying, I vote because I'm a voter, or I feel empowered. So Andy, what do you found has worked for headcount in terms of messaging strategies, nudges, et cetera? And Eves, when you're talking to young people or your peers, what do you tell them about why their vote matters, or what do you find to be more inspiring? Go with Andy first.
For us, I think it also starts with the messenger. And musicians have been a great messenger because they literally have a stage and have a really strong connection. And especially grassroots artists have this kind of community-based model for their own careers.
Yep.
And it lends itself to community organizing and getting the vote out. So one of the things that we're going to do this year, and you're going to see a lot of from other organizations, is something called vote tripling, where you not only ask somebody to pledge to vote, which is kind of a standard thing that probably is not that effective, but you ask them to give the names of 3 friends who you pledge to get out and vote. And then you follow up with them using simple technology, a text message, an email before the election. Say, hey, you said that you'd get Mary, Fred, and Joe to vote. We want to remind you to do that, and here's something you can send them. And there have been studies to show this is effective. So that's kind of our starting point, that the messenger is as important as the message. Now with messages, one thing that is really challenging is that when you're nonpartisan, as soon as you delve into the issue water, there can be a very strong perception of partisanship. And it's very, very challenging, and I think it's challenging for brands. It's definitely challenging for C3 organizations. There are ways, but the kind of way through that is by giving people the tools to put their own message. So one of our tricks at festivals is we have people take a photo at a booth, at a photo booth, and it says, I'm a voter because. And then people fill in their own message, and it can be issues, it can be what comes out of them.
That's great. Great. Eves, what do you think?
For me, I would say what I find most inspiring, or I think is most inspiring, when talking to my kids, I don't have children, but my kids, is honesty and reality. And the reality of many situations is that, sometimes what we're going through, it just sucks, and it's hard. And bringing that realness to any group of people, I feel like, is where you're able to see real growth happen. And I always say this to my family and friends and anyone really, is Black people can't be the only people advocating for Black people. Same with how trans people can't be the only people advocating for trans people. Of course, you can be in a room of people who all agree with you and say, I agree, I agree, I agree. But the real step happens when there's someone who doesn't really understand you and is able to step into this circle and see why something is so important. I can't expect you to understand me if you don't care about me. So taking that time to have those conversations outside of your peer groups and outside of people you know, as I feel when things actually happen.
Yeah. So Yves, I kind of want to follow up on that
Yeah.
because I think for a lot of certain communities in this country, they don't think their vote matters.
Absolutely.
And you are motivated to vote if you believe your institutions are working for you. But for many in this country, they don't feel the court system represents them, schools, police force, the justice system.
Absolutely.
And I think on top of that, you've got a lot of young men of color who are incarcerated before they're even vote eligible.
Correct.
And then later on that, you've got 6 million African Americans who are disenfranchised because they have felony convictions. So almost 1 in 13 African Americans can't vote today because of a felony conviction. What do we say to folks in that situation who do not feel like they're full participants in this democracy? And you can kind of see why they might feel that way.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
To be real, it's hard to, say anything to someone who's going through something like that, especially if you haven't experienced it or if you know nothing about it. And I encourage you all, if you haven't already, to watch 13th on Netflix. Extremely informative and just really vital to this conversation, what we're talking about right now. And something and I also do some work in Los Angeles with a certain high school of kids who have been victims of gang violence or have experienced gang violence or have lost people in their lives due to police brutality. And it's really difficult to trust and believe that something is going to change or something will happen when you are in the midst of that issue and you're sitting in that problem. And I think that a good way to start this is informing these communities and my community and these families on starting small, because of course we all want to go and march to the nearest police station and scream at the top of our lungs and tell them this isn't right, but sometimes we can start small. And I think it's in Rochester this year you can vote on police accountability, which is something that most people didn't know. And even though it's a victory over here, it's not a loss over here. Like, even though there's something, change is happening over here, it doesn't mean that change won't happen for us on this side. And that's something important, just to let young people and all people really know that, hey, just so you know, over here that this is being voted on, and maybe that's something to counsel or fight for in your own city or in your own town, in your own state. And it can be really easy to feel small in that situation because there are so many lives that have been ruined and lost due to mass incarceration for reasons above and beyond. And I think it's insane to me how there can be a young black man who was charged at 15 for having a dime bag and not tried until he's 18 and not released until he's 24, and he can't vote or get a job. But then we have dispensaries of marijuana before doing yoga in LA. But yeah, there's someone who is serving 10 years for driving in a car with a bag of marijuana. And that's just wild to me, that an entire life is ruined, but yet this life is being glorified for creating this product.
Yeah, well said. Andy, do you have thoughts about this too?
Well, just on that notion, the cannabis is a really interesting issue because it is something that can bring out young voters.
Yeah.
And there are studies that are showing that. And it gets to the Ad Council's research that there are certain issues, one, that are less partisan in perception than others, and that actually can get the vote out. And I think that we've known we've known that abortion is an issue that can get the vote out. We know that guns on the gun rights side is an issue that can get the vote out. And we're starting to see more modern issues develop, and the social justice element of that is critical. And what's happening in cannabis reform right now is that social justice is at the front and center of every state legislation question. And that is now, and it's a very recent phenomenon, this is the central conversation when legislation is being crafted. And so this is something that we see with headcount as these are the kind of things that just people knowing about these things can get people who feel that politics is not relevant to them suddenly start to feel that politics is relevant to them.
Yeah. And how about, because for felons who may be on probation or parole, it's a patchwork for different states. It's like there's also education just to let people, some of them may not know that they can actually vote, right?
Oh, very true. I love telling a story. I was in a cab, and my local town, I live in a small town in Jersey, and my local cab driver, we were talking about local politics, and I asked him who he supported, and he said, and he was this super political cab driver, and he told me that he couldn't vote because of a mistake he made 20 years ago. And I said, listen, man, we're in New Jersey, and I pulled out my phone, and I went on the headcount website and checked the felon voting laws, and I was like, you've been able to vote the whole time, man. And there's so much misinformation, and literally I was like, give me your name. I just put it all into our website and registered him to vote while he was driving me home. And so just getting information out there, I mean, it's a huge emphasis for us. Our website has all of that, and we sent 3.5 million emails last year, geo-targeted emails with when early voting starts, when absentee ballot applications are due, and all these things, because who the heck knows these things? It's just not part of daily life. So we have a job to do, and this is where I think brand partners and media and all these things can help out, because there's just gaps. People perceive things that aren't always true. And in the Northeast and in most Democrat-leaning states, the reality is that felons can vote. And we've got to get word out about that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, this reminds me, I was talking to a political consultant, Republican, who was saying what used to be a high information voter, there was just a level of information voters had. It's just, there's just such a low level of information about candidates, issues, et cetera. All right, I'm going to take a question from the audience. Have you been able to engage people who are not eligible to vote in vote registration efforts?
Yeah, particularly young people. So at the Ariana Grande tour and the Billie Eilish tour, we do a pledge to vote for people who are not yet old enough to vote, and then we email them on the month before their 18th birthday. So that works great. And we also find that, just getting back to the felon question, so our heritage is we started out with the Grateful Dead as our big partner. And we've grown well beyond that, but we still go to all the festivals that are in that world. And in that world, there are many, many people with felony convictions. So we are messaging to some who can vote and some who can't. And one really special moment for us as an organization was when the state of Virginia re-enfranchised hundreds of thousands of people. 2 of our longtime volunteers, we didn't know this. They had never told anybody this. They were like, guys, I can't vote until now. And we had kind of like a little ceremony at one of our booths where these are people who themselves had registered hundreds or thousands of voters and couldn't vote themselves, and we got to register them at our booth.
Yeah, that's really important. I've also, I think our Democracy Works friends have told us how hard it is to engage, off year or a 17-year-old, because unless you can give them something to do right away, it's hard if they're not eligible to vote yet, right? Eve's, another great question. This is sort of related to what we were just talking about. So how do you manage the voting privilege the civil rights movement afforded minorities with fatigued youth that have never experienced democracy work for them?
Wow.
Wow. I bet you have an opinion about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, there's not enough time here on this thing.
Yeah, we have 6 minutes
for
left.
me to say all that I want to say. But the way that I try to manage it, honestly, is through conversation and accountability. Just making sure that, because my peers keep me accountable, and they keep me up to date and let me know what their concerns are and things that they want to see change. Because I feel like it's like we can sit all day and like talk about like things that we want to do and ideas that we have and things we want to see, but unless action is taken after these words, then it's just words, and we are the ones that are actually able to like go out and do these things. So that's what, and I wish that we took these kids more seriously, and because of their situations and because of their backgrounds, and a lot of these kids that I get the chance to hang out with are involved in sex work or are homeless or living on the streets, and you know, people hear that and they're like, you know, poor you, like this is so sad, but to them, this is their life, this is all that they know, and I think that we can learn more from them than they can learn from us in terms of speaking out and being bold and taking charge of things that we care about and things that should matter to all of us. And I mean, the youth are tired, but the youth are talented. And they are also determined. And I feel that this is just a small little stone that is going to be a part of something bigger that they're creating, that they're doing, which is why I spend so much of my time with them, because they teach me more than I teach them.
Yeah, Andy, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that too.
Well, in terms of in terms of talking to young people, certainly young people are not monolithic, and there's going to be a lot of different experiences. From our standpoint, a big part of Headcount is the volunteer experience, and we have a Facebook page that our volunteers created on their own years ago, a Headcount Team Leader Facebook page, and this is just a totally active community where we actually, as a staff, headquarters, we try to stay out of it. Let it be owned by the volunteers. And what we found is that so many people with our organization, they get involved for one reason and then stay involved for another. And whether it's a lot of it is that strong sense of community and the empowerment that comes from meeting like-minded people. And that can be just a very powerful force in almost anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also a really important question because Gen Z will be 50% people of color, that generation. So they're going to have a huge impact. It's a diverse, well-educated generation that's going to have a huge impact on our politics and elections. So watch out, right?
Yeah.
I also, Yves, I just want to give a call out to you because I think you're just setting the example and talking about these issues, whether it's LGBT. I don't know, probably, some people know this, but Yves also went viral during the Women's March.
I did.
Do you want to talk about what you did and kind of how you went viral?
I went to the Women's March 2 years ago, and the year prior to that, there were 55 murders of black trans women, and none of them were reported on the news. And 5 of those women I actually knew, and were people that I was doing life with, and people. And so I went to the march, and I had a sign that said "Trans Women Too," and I posted it, and then I lost service, and I went to a Starbucks and connected to the Wi-Fi, and saw that in an hour it was like 14,000 times, and I was like, what's happening? I don't know what this is. And then the following day it was getting shared and reposted a whole bunch, and so much good came from that, and a lot of bad came from that as well. But I don't care either way, because the fact is that it needs to be said and that these voices need to be amplified. And I will definitely say too, it shouldn't take someone dying for you to stand up for something. And with me going to the march after that, I was invited to go speak at a bunch of different places as to why I feel this way and why I stand so strongly for trans rights. But through that, little side story.
Love side stories.
Little side story. So I used to live in Flatbush. I live in Bushwick now. And when I was living in Flatbush, there was like a Target 2 blocks away from me. And of course, through all of this stuff on social media, you get good reviews, bad reviews, neutral reviews. And this person posted the photo of me from the march and said that I was ruining masculinity in America and I need to be killed.
Oh.
And I didn't even know this post was made until people were tagging me. I was the 1,000th comment. It was a tag, and it was oh, this is such and such, and they tagged me. And people in the comments were saying, I've seen him in New York. I can kill him for you. I can find him. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, okay. So then I called my dad, and I was like, people are trying to kill me. And my dad was like, what's going on? And I was like, the social media thing and all this stuff. And so I was like kind of nervous, but like not like freaking out. But then that day I went to the Target that was down the block, and I'm standing in the self-checkout line, and I have my headphones in. And I see this guy like looking at me from the side, and I get stared at a lot because I have tattoos on my face. And so I just kept looking this way, and I saw him like move around out of the line to really look at me. And then I took my headphone out, and I was like, hey, like, can I help you? And he held up a picture of me on his phone. He was like, hey, is this you? And I was like, is it me? He was like, is this you? And I was like, does it look like me? It's probably me. Like, it's me. Can I help you? And he said, because of you, my son thinks it's okay to be gay. And I was like, well, I mean, if your son is gay, he's probably gay. So you should go home and love your son. And he said, my son is wearing crop tops to school, and I found pictures of you on his phone. I was like, I don't know who your son is. These are probably screenshots. Does he have social media? And he told me that if I don't stop posting what I'm posting, that he's gonna blow up my apartment. And he knows where I live. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna go to the police station, have a good day. And then so I check out my stuff, and I go to the police, and I was like, hey, like, let's go to Target. And the officer was like, why, what's going on? And I was like, come with me to Target. Let's watch the surveillance video. There's a guy saying he's gonna kill me. He knows where I live. My roommates are in danger. Can you please come to my apartment with me? I mean, to Target with me. And then he told me to break down the situation, so I was breaking down the whole thing, and I was like, this is what's going on. And at the end, the officer says to me, well, you know, if you have a high profile on social media, this kind of thing is expected. And I was like, expected? I was like, this person, like, first of all, he's going home to his kid, and I'm scared for his kid, because if he's gonna tell a total stranger he's gonna kill them, what's he gonna tell it to his son? And nothing was solved, nothing was done, nothing was taken care of. And that's just, that small example of what I face as a cisgender man doesn't compare to the violence and the harassment and mockery and disrespect that trans people face, so much to the point where it costs them their lives. Yeah. And so me going to the march and bringing that sign was the least that I could do, and getting the chance to hang out with trans youth is the least that I could do, because they are so much more than just trans. It's a person who's trying to live out their life and achieve things same like you, trying to go to the bathroom and take a piss, like eat food, just do it, just be. Right. And I just feel like any chance that you ever have to speak out for someone else, you should always take it. And I took it, and yeah.
That's well said. Well said.
Yeah.
I think that brings us full circle. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Brings us full circle to why so much is at stake with elections and voting, and these things they're very personal and they matter. Andy, can you just wrap it up for us? What can brands be doing for?
I'm
Derek's
not going to
give you the
top
hook.
that story. Well, I think we are at a unique moment in time, for sure, and we're going to see brands engage around this election at unprecedented levels. And the best thing we say to any brand, and I did a piece in Adweek recently with some thoughts on how brands can best engage, is multiple channels. No one tries to sell a product by doing one thing. Marketing is interdisciplinary. And when brands approach get out the vote or just civic engagement in that way, it can be extremely effective. So whether it's there are a few things that work well, whether it's donating advertising inventory, like through the Ad Council, or getting ambassadors involved, or PR involved, or using digital. Any brand with a big email list can register thousands of voters. These are all easy things to do, and when you start doing more than one or two, it really becomes, it supports the social impact priorities of the brand identity. And that's what Headcount wants to really be a part of, is helping brands unleash that. And I think there are so many people who care a lot about this election and are asking themselves, what can I do? I don't want to feel I didn't do enough. Yep. And there are many, many things that can be done. And when you start doing more than one, you really are going to make a difference, and it's going to become part of the brand DNA if it isn't already.
Well said. Great. Thank you both for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you. Thanks to the
Thank you.
audience. Yeah, awesome. You guys will get off the stage.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Make sure that you check out the cause and social influence research. Kate, thanks for co-hosting, Ag Council, all of those things. We also need to say a big thank you to the Levi Strauss Foundation, Jason and crew, Daniel, Sarah, everybody who has helped us as well from that. So please support their social justice leaders and the movements that they're behind as well. We are going to say goodbye to everybody online, but everybody here, stick around, enjoy a drink on us, and then come back because we've got some wonderful trivia. Good prizes. Let's say what they are. Top prize, $200 in Levi's gift cards, $200 to your favorite charity from Global Giving, as well as the next 3 winners will also get $100 and $100 to charity of your choice as well. So grab a drink, come right back. We'll be with you in about 10 minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.